Hi, my name is Roman Villarreal, and in this quick tutorial I'm going to show you how to use Cinemagraphs and animated GIFs on different video clips. In this case here I have some stock from Adobe stock that I'm using. If I go ahead and play this back for you here, you'll see that there's a little girl here, she's blowing bubbles. And so what I'm going to do is take parts of this image and freeze it so that I can create a juxtapose between motion and a frozen person here, okay, and it creates some kind of strange looking effects that tend to catch people's eye, especially on social media channels. You'll see a lot of these being created. The other thing I'm going to show you is how to export these out into an animated GIF format or also a 20 to 30 second MP4 file. Nonetheless, I'm going to go ahead and start here by taking this clip and dragging it onto the new composition icon so we can get started here. Now when you're using these images, I find that working with humans is probably the most challenging because they move around. If you're going to set this up, you might not want to use stock footage. In this case I was able to work this out pretty decently, but it was a lot more work. If I play this back, the little girl's moving around too much, there's stuff in the background. This is going to be a lot more work than another clip I'm going to do in just a second. But basically what you're going to have to do is find a spot in which you can find repeated motion and just loop that through. In this case here, I'm going to pick the spot right around 2 seconds. The camera's pretty still, and we must have put that on a tripod, and that's going to be really essential. So I'm going to take this clip, I'm going to duplicate it, just hit Command D if you're on the Mac, Control D if you're on the PC, and I'm going to freeze this guy right in time here. So in order to do a freeze frame, I'm going to pick the spot in which I want it frozen, which is this spot in time, and I'm going to go to Layer, Time, Freeze Frame. This little rectangle shows up here. This is indicating the freeze frame, and if I were to play this back, you would see that this bottom layer is frozen. For example, if I play this back here, you see it's now frozen. Okay, I'm going to turn this top layer back on because we're going to work on this next. I'm going to select this layer. I'm going to trim it right to where the CTI is, where the playhead is here. One way I can do is I can just drag this here and hold my Shift key, and it snaps. Okay. The other way is I can hold my Alt or Option key on the Mac, and I can hit my bracket key, which is right underneath the plus or minus keys on your keyboard. So I'll hit that right there. It trims the clip. I can now play this forward here, and I just need a couple seconds of, if maybe just 1 second would be actually enough. So maybe about right there. You can see her head kind of moves a little bit, and I want to be careful not to get too much of a facial motion. Again, it's going to be a lot more work. So this ought to be good enough, at least for this quick demo. And I can trim this by dragging this all the way back over here, or I can hit Alt right bracket, again, underneath the plus or minus key under the keyboard. And I'm also going to hit N, like November, okay? That creates an end spot for my work area. I can take my work area start and drag this, holding my Shift key, just right to the beginning here. Now I can move this back to the beginning. I'll do that in just a second. But if I play this back for you here, you'll see that you have just the video on top, and it's just looping right there. So this is going to be a little bit challenging. I would probably have to create a mask. And again, if I were working with a model, I would tell them to be perfectly still while they're blowing the bubbles. And that makes it for a much easier task. I'm going to go ahead and grab my pen tool right here to create a mask. I have currently at the beginning of my clip here, I'm going to just start clicking. I'm using this Roto Bezier tool to create this mask. And I can come here and just kind of go off the screen holding my space bar and letting go of it. I want to get as close to the bubbles and far away from the human as possible. Okay, I might also have to come into this mask and take this and turn on the mask path stopwatch. And what that lets me do is it lets me animate the mask. Now I can hit my page up, page down key on my keyboard to go 1 frame forward, 1 frame backward. So I'm just going to go 1 frame forward here, and I can see that mask still looks pretty good. There's a little bit getting covered up here. And so essentially what I would need to do is just kind of click off this mask and just move those points around the best I can. Now again, this is a stock clip. It's not a perfect scenario. I should have probably just done this myself. With one of my kids in the backyard, it would have been a lot easier, but I like a challenge sometimes, I guess. So I'm going to push this through, and it's just a matter of rotoscoping this 1 frame at a time. This isn't a big deal. It'd probably take me about 5 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and just run through this really quick. Okay, now So when I play through this, you'll see that I have a mask here, and a mask is being animated over time. So at this point, if I need to make any corrections, I can play through this, move these around, make this look good, but I'm pretty happy with it for the most part. I'm going to go ahead and open up the mask feather, and I can also feather out some of these edges here just to make sure that the skin of the bottom layer fades in with the top layer and the bubbles and all that kind of stuff. So feather is your friend. Okay, don't add too much, otherwise you'll end up making some distortion in the image. It won't look good. So if I click away and play this back now, I'm going to just come right here. I have a pretty decent cinematograph. You can see that there's her lips moving a little bit. Her nose is kind of distorted. There's a little problem with her eye. And so basically what I would need to do is kind of go back at those spots where the mask crosses her eye, which is about right there, and I would need to be a little closer to her face. Again, this is not a perfect example, but a good initial try. Humans are the hardest to work with when you're making the cinemagraphs, especially if the animated object is going over the subject's face. So that's good enough for now. Yeah, not too bad. Her lips are moving. I'd have to clear up that mask, but I think you get the point. Once I have both of these taken care of, I'm going to go ahead and pull this to the beginning. Okay, I'm just dragging this to the very beginning of my timeline. Okay, I can move this work area as well to the beginning. And basically I have my completed cinemagraph. I would really need to clean that up, but I add some coloring. So I'm going to right click and choose New, add an adjustment layer, maybe add the lumetri color effect to this, and I don't know, maybe go to the creative section and choose maybe one of these Kodak presets, for example. Okay, that's pretty nice. And basically I got my completed cinemagraph. And that's what's going to loop. From now to here, I'm going to go to Export. I'm going to choose Add to Render Queue or Add to Media Encoder Queue. If I choose Add to Media Encoder Queue, basically a media encoder will launch, and I have an option to export this as an MP4 file. Clear out these old projects here, and I can say YouTube. That'll work, or maybe I want to choose the Facebook option. That's pretty logical that I'd probably put that on Facebook. Now the thing is, this thing isn't going to play that many times over. In fact, I need this to loop. But MP4s don't loop. It's not on Facebook. And so this has to be at least 20 seconds. And at this point here, if I were to render this out, it's only going to be the distance of the work area, which is, sheesh, it's not even 14, well, not even a second long. It's only 14 frames long. And so basically I need to find a way to get this to loop. So before I even take it into Media Encoder, I'm going to cancel this out. Okay, before I even take it over here, what I need to do is render this out right here inside of After Effects. So instead I'm going to choose Export, Add to Render Queue, and I can choose Lossless to keep this at a good quality. I might actually be better off choosing something a little more lightweight, like the GoPro or one of these ProRes presets. Okay, Adobe seems to be pushing GoPro a lot, so I'm going to use that option there and hit OK. I'm going to go ahead and do one more thing in here. I'm going to say, go ahead and import it for me when you're done rendering this After Effects. And I should probably give this a better name. I'm just going to go ahead and name this something with a girl and bubbles. Okay, that'll be easy to find. Nonetheless, I'm going to come back over into my project panel. I'll see that show up in just a second. I'm going to go ahead and render this out, and you'll see this thing will render rather fast. It's going to be a lossless clip, okay, but it's only going to be, what, 14 frames long. So from this point, what I can do is I can go ahead and take this into a new composition. I could slow this down or speed this up if I want to. For example, if I make my duration of my clip, say, 20 seconds now, this is going to be very tiny in a 20-second world. Okay, it's very tiny. But I could bring my time and maybe stretch this a little bit. So now when I play this back, it's a lot slower. Okay, a lot slower than it was before. If I want this to loop, I can go ahead and take this clip here. Okay, this is the one that I rendered out with the ridiculous name, and I can click on this button right here. This button right here is the Interpret Footage button. And by clicking on this, I get this window with a whole bunch of stuff in here, but I can go ahead and loop this. Now, I'm just going to loop this 100 times. It's more than I need. When I do that, the clip doesn't look like it changed a lot, but now I can stretch it all the way through 20 seconds. When I play this back now, this thing will just loop all the way through 20 seconds. There is kind of a jump right there. I'm going to address this in another example I'm going to show you in just a second. But from here, I can go ahead and render this out. I could export an MP4. A little later, I'll show you how to export a GIF, an animated GIF. I'm going to go ahead and show you a different example, though. In this case here, I have this backyard shot with some butterflies. This is some footage I took in my backyard. Beautiful little butterfly here. I'm going to pick a certain point in time where he's opening and closing his wings. Now there's a lot of butterflies moving in the background. You see the trees moving just a little bit. I just need a little bit of this footage of him just kind of opening and closing his wings before he flies away. Okay, so this was a little tricky when I shot this because the guy kept flying away on me. But nonetheless, when I play this through, I got a perfect shot right there. So from about this point right here, right before he opens his wings, I'm going to go ahead and cut that clip. Now what I recommend doing before you start is going and duplicating your freeze framed layer. It makes it easier lining these clips up. So I'm going to choose this bottom layer. I'm going to go ahead and choose time and do a freeze frame. This is now frozen at time. I can go ahead and click on this clip here, do an Alt left bracket to trim that there. I'm going to play this forward. He's going to open and close his wings again. As soon as he closes his wings again, I'm going to go ahead and do an Alt right bracket to trim that clip. I can hit N, I can come to the beginning here and hit B, and now I have just a little clip. But it kind of jumps though. And we saw that in the bubbles earlier. I'm going to fix that this time. I'm going to show you how to do that. So I am pretty happy with the way he looks though. To fix this clip, I'm going to go ahead and select both these clips here and bring them to the beginning of my timeline. Okay. And I'm going to move this to the beginning as well. And I'm going to take this clip here and I'm going to duplicate it. So I have the exact same clip on top of it. And this time though, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it end to end with the previous clip. And so I have this clip here, but it still just kind of jumps. Okay, these two clips just jump and they don't look very good. So I can take this clip here and I can say layer, time, reverse layer. And what that does is it plays this clip in reverse. So when I play this back now, I can move my work area and trim it right there. So I'm just working with this space right here. And now it just looks like he's flapping his wings open and closed. Okay. I still have the problem with the little dude in the back. Okay, little guy around, flying around. And so I'm going to have to create a mask like I did earlier. In fact, I probably should have done that much earlier, but I'm going to do that now. So with his wings open like that, I'm going to make sure I have this layer selected, and I'm going to just come here and take out just a flower. Now I'm taking the whole flower because the whole flower moves, and that can sometimes cause problems because maybe part of the motion, like the butterfly flies back through there, that one in the background, it could be an issue. Okay, and so I want to play this through, and yeah, it looks pretty good. I can't really see any problems there. Now I will hit F for feather. I'm going to add just a little bit of feather there to soften the edges just a bit. And I'm like, oh man, now I got to do this over here too. Well, if I have to do this over again, you're better off just copying the mask. So I can just select it, hit Control C or Command C in the Mac, and I can select this layer and I can just paste that mask. The mask is going to be in the exact same spot as it was in this previous clip. So pretty much if I play this back, you can see that I have this butterfly. It's playing a little slow because I'm going to do that time reverse. But that looks pretty good and everything else is frozen. Another thing that you can do with this clip is you can do selective colors. So maybe the background is black and white, but the foreground is in full color. Or maybe you could make the butterfly larger or change its color, do all sorts of stuff with coloring effects. Now there is a feature in Lumetri Color, for example, that you can add in here, and it's called the HSL Color. And so, for example, what I can do is I can go to this key and I can set the color, which is going to happen to be my little butterfly here. And I can say, okay, the butterfly is that brown color, and I want to remove the green. Okay. Now, this tutorial is not going to cover the details of this particular plugin, but I could pull this around. I can see a mask is showing up here. In fact, I can even just show the mask here in After Effects. I can pull this around. The objective is to get more of his wings. Okay, and so that looks pretty good. And you're like, well, what about those little spots? It'll be fine. When I take this off, you can see the mask is there. Okay, and basically what you do is you turn off the mask because you don't need that mask. It's just a way to select the right color. But then you come down here, for example, in the color correction, and you could maybe change the color of the butterfly. And you can see him kind of changing a little bit of blue. Okay, but what you can also do is you can take the saturation and maybe make him completely desaturated, so he looks kind of grayish there. Okay, and you can add some tint, and there's all a little contrast and such that you could add to make him look more interesting. What I can also do is I can invert the mask, and so now everything else but him is being colored. You can see the background here is not colored. I can take the same effect, I can copy it, paste it on my top layer so that now this top layer with the time reverse also has that same effect. And for my background, I could add maybe a tint or a black and white effect, okay? And now you can see that that blends in really nicely, and I have this butterfly flapping here. I think that looks pretty good, okay? Now from this point on, I can render out an MP4. That's an easy work. I just come add this to Media Encoder queue. Now this is, again, it's not long enough though, and so I really need something that's going to be longer. However, if this was going to go into Media Encoder, again, if I choose Facebook, this whole clip is going to be a distance of who knows what. Now I used this from my camera, and so I got some weird numbers here. If I hit Command K, I can set the start time code to 0, and these numbers make a lot more sense to me. So my clip is only about 3 seconds long. If I want to do the same thing I did earlier and create a continuous loop that goes for 20 seconds, I'm going to have to render it out just like I did the girl and put that clip. I have to choose that button again, that interpret footage button with the new clip that I rendered, drag it onto a new timeline of 20 seconds, and render it out just like I showed you using one of these presets like the Facebook 720p. But this time I want to show you how you can do it using an animated GIF. Now this is a big HD clip, and that's going to be okay. It's just going to take a little while, but I'm going to choose File, Export, and I'll choose Add to Render Queue. From this menu I'm going to hit the lossless button, and I need to make a choice. In fact, in this case, I'm going to go ahead and choose a PNG sequence. This is going to, again, make my animated GIF. There is no GIF option in here. There is a way to do an animated GIF out of After Effects, but you have to buy a plugin. Nonetheless, everything else should be fine. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK and make sure that I create a folder somewhere. In this case, it's going to put a folder called C0064. That's fine with me, and I'm going to render this thing out. So this could take a little while to render. You'll have to be patient with it, and when we're done, we're going to bring it into Photoshop. Okay, now that this is finished rendering, I'm going to go ahead and jump right into Photoshop. Now, in Photoshop, I'm going to go ahead and choose File, Open. Okay, I'm going to open these PNG sequences. I'm going to open this folder. This is all the little pieces of this clip. So I can select the first one, for example. Really important, don't forget to turn on the image sequence button, and that's going to go ahead and bring this in a special way. When you choose this option, you'll get a choice of changing the frame rate, which is kind of cool. So if I wanted to speed it up, I could maybe go like to 60, or if I wanted to slow it down, I could go maybe to 10. I'm going to go ahead and choose 60 just for kicks and hit OK. This comes into Photoshop, and you'll see that this says Video Group. If you see that, then you were successful. Okay, and you can add effects, and still you can do whatever you want in here, just like you would in any type of Photoshop file. In this case, I'm good to go. I'm going to go ahead and choose File, Export, Save for Web, Legacy, old school. I'm going to choose that option there, and then it takes forever. Okay, because this is an HD clip, and Photoshop just drags, even if you got a really fast machine. Okay, so after about a minute, I do recommend being patient on this process because it can take some time, especially if you're using ridiculously large HD footage. Animated GIFs are only going to be 256 colors. So one of the considerations is you don't want this clip to be as big as 1920 by 1080. So one thing you can do is you can chop down the percentage here of this clip. So for example, I could just say 25%. It's going to make a pretty nice small clip size here, which could be used for social media, for example. On the looping options, I can choose forever. Okay, and that's it. When I'm done, I'm going to go ahead and hit save. Okay, once it's ready, it's going to ask you to save your file. I'm just going to save mine on my desktop. I'm going to call this butterfly. Okay, oops. There you go, butterfly. And hit save. And the saving process is pretty quick. I can go ahead and go to my desktop. Okay, there's my desktop right there. And there's my GIF. So I can play that back. And now I have a GIF playing at 60 frames a second. It's only using 256 colors, so you got to be careful in the quality. But this is ready. This is ready to be put up on, say, maybe one of these GIF sharing websites, and then you could stick it as a link inside of Facebook, and it would play right there as people scroll down on their pages, on their Facebook pages. Anyways, that's all for today. Thank you very much for watching.